Hey everyone, in this video we're going to learn how to add Google OAuth in our Nextjs project using Supabase. In the previous video we have got an introduction to the Supabase and we also set up our Nextjs project that can work with Supabase. So let's learn how to add Google OAuth in our project. So first you just need to go to Google Cloud Console, console.cloud.google.com, and then you need to create a new project. So let's create one. I'm going to call it Supabase auth/yt. And let's create. So let's select the project now. Now go to the navigation menu and API and services, then OAuth consent screen. Choose external, create app name. I'm gonna put Supabase auth yt. Then user support email. I'm going to choose mine. I don't need any app logo. Then you have app domain, you can skip it for now I guess, and then you need to add this authorized domain. So add domain, and you just need to go to the Supabase dashboard and copy this project URL and paste it here. And you shouldn't add HTTPS, that's fine. And developer contact information, I'm just gonna put my email, and let's save and continue. Now you need to choose scope, so add or remove scopes, and choose userinfo.email, userinfo.profile, and this OpenID, and then just update. And now let's save and continue. We don't need this, save and continue. So let's go to the dashboard. Now just go to credentials and click on create credentials, OAuth client ID, application type will be web application. The name, I'm gonna again call it Supabase auth yt, and let's click on add URI and add localhost 3000. You can get the redirect URI from Supabase dashboard, so just go to your dashboard. Then on the sidebar you have authentication, so just go to the authentication. Then you need to go to providers and you need to find the Google provider. It will be disabled, you need to enable it. You need to get this callback URL for OAuth, copy this, add URI and paste it here. And now let's just create. We have this client ID and client secret, so copy them, go to the dashboard and paste it, and again copy the secret, paste it over here and click save. And now we need to code our Nextjs app. And now we need to create a new route for the sign in and sign up page. So I'm gonna create an auth page, so page.jsx. I'm just gonna paste some code over here. So basically we are rendering an h1 and an component called auth form, which we haven't created yet, so let's create one. So inside the source, let's create a directory, components, then forms/auth form.jsx. Let's create a component. We're gonna make this a client component. And now let's create a form. Let's add a button with the class of button. Sign in with Google. And now we need to create a server action. So in the docs, go to this flows section and then social login. Then just go to Google. And if we scroll down, here you will see how to sign in with Google. You have two flows that you can use. One is implicit flow, another one is the PKCE flow or PKCE flow. The implicit flow is for client-side rendering and the PKCE flow is server-side rendering. The implicit flow is simple. You just call a function, sign in with OAuth, then pass the provider, and that's it. It's just a one request response cycle. But for PKCE flow, it's a bit complex. So I'm gonna try my best to explain it. I'm not sure how good the explanation will be, but I will try my best. So how PKCE works? So you have two entities. One is your own server, another one is the OAuth server, in this case the Google server. So your server first generate a random secret code and then it encrypts it using some kind of algorithm. So at first the server sends a request to the OAuth server, and that request actually includes this encrypted code. And in return, the Google OAuth server will return this authorization token, but still you are not logged in. After that, the server will send that secret code plus that authorization token that it has got recently to the OAuth server. Now the OAuth server, in this case Google, will actually decrypt the code. Then Google will try to match the decrypted code and the secret code. If both are the same, Google will send us an access token, and that access token is basically JSON web token. And now you will have access to the OAuth resources. In simple words, user is now logged in with their Google account. So that's how this PKCE works. And also the secret code is actually called the code verifier, and the encrypted code is actually called the code puzzle. So that's how this PKCE flow works, but you don't need to worry about it. Supabase handles all of this stuff for you. So let's create a file inside this utils directory called actions.js. And we need to add the use server directive to make sure all the functions that will be exported from this file are considered server actions. So let's create a function, sign in with, and this function will actually return another function because we want to reuse this function for different provider, for example Google and also GitHub. So it will take a provider name and then it will return an asynchronous function. And now we need to create a Supabase client, and we need to use the Supabase client function that we had created in the server.js file, this create client for server. So create client for server, and then you need to create a callback URL, which will be your domain /auth/callback. This auth/callback is an API route. We need to create one, and the site URL variable, we need to add that manually to our environment variable. So let's go to the env file and just add site URL http localhost 3000. On production though, you need to add your project URL. This is fine for development. And now we need to call the sign in with OAuth function, but for that we need to make sure that we have awaited this function call. So await supabase.auth.signin with OAuth. We need to pass an object. Here we need to pass the provider name, and then we need to pass an options object. And here we need to pass a redirect to property, which should be the auth callback URL. Finally, let's create another function, sign in with Google, and then call the sign in with function and pass Google, and now export. And looks like the LSP has used the required syntax. We don't want that. The import path should be at util/supabase/server. Yeah, that should be fine. Now we need to create this /auth/callback API route. So just go to the app directory, then auth, and create another directory. It should be called callback, then route.js, and here I'm just gonna copy paste some code. So in the Supabase documentation, if you scroll down, here you will find this code for adding this callback API route. This is in TypeScript, but I've converted to JavaScript. So basically here we will get the code in the URL parameter. This code is actually that authorization token that Google will send you, and then you will use that code to call another function called exchange code for session. This will have you the access token, the JWT token, which will make sure that you are logged in. So since the API route is created, let's go to the actions file, and this sign in with OAuth function will return you an object which will contain the data and error. So let's console log the data, and if there is any kind of error, we're gonna console log it. Let's go to the auth form and add a form action, sign in with Google. Let's run the dev server. Just go to localhost 3000/auth. Let's click on sign in with Google, and on the terminal we have an object printed out. It says provider Google, and we have a URL. We need to redirect user to this URL. There is a built-in function in Nextjs called redirect. You might see two import paths, next/dist/server/API utils. Another one is next/navigation. Use the next/navigation and then pass data.url, and that should be it. Let's test. Sign in with Google, and now we can choose an account. Let's continue, and now I'm redirected to the home page. Let's try to get the session. So just go to the paste.jsx file inside the app directory for the home page. Let's create another Supabase client. Create client for server. Let's make this an async component. Await supabase.auth.getUser. So const session and console log it. Let's go to the terminal, and now we have an object printed out. We have this user with an ID authenticated. We have this email, we have app metadata, user metadata. We can see everything in the console. If I go to the browser and open up the console over here, you should see the logs from the server. I have recently discovered it. I didn't know it was actually there. So I will zoom in for you. So if I expand this, we have data, user, and inside user we have identities, then user metadata, which contains a lot of stuff like full name, avatar, phone verified or not, pictures, and so on. If I also go to the Supabase dashboard, just go to the authentication, then users, and here you'll see a user If you select, you'll see the information, the providers that it has been used. You can also ban user, delete user, and so on. So that's how you can add Google OAuth in Next.js using Supabase. Now there is another function called getSession. So in the return object of getSession, you have this session object which has this access token, expired date, provider token, refresh token, the token type. Then you also have a user object which is kind of similar to the previous object. Now when should you use getUser and getSession? Now getSession should be only used in client side because it's not that secure, and on server side you should only use getUser function, because when you call the getUser function, it actually sends a request to the Supabase server, making sure that the user session is actually correct. And I'm gonna talk more about this on the authorization video, so stay tuned for that. And before I end this video, I'm just gonna add some UI to our home page displaying the user data. So just go to the page.js. So first we can add a sign in button which will redirect the user to the sign in page if the user is not logged in. So I'm going to paste the code here. So we are checking if the user is not logged in. If not, then we will render a link as a button which will redirect you to the auth page. And I need to import the link component. Now it says not authenticated, sign in, and now I'm in the auth page. If the user is logged in, I'm gonna destructure some variable, and I'm getting the name, email, username, and avatar URL. Then I'm dynamically setting the username. If the username doesn't exist, I'm gonna say username not set. I'm gonna remove the hello world part and paste the code. So these class names will center everything to the page, and then we are rendering the avatar, and then the name, username, email, and then the provider is used for this account. And finally we will have a button for sign out, and we haven't created this sign out function, so let's create that. So let's go to actions. So let's go to the actions.js file. So let's create sign out function. I don't need to redirect, and the rest of the code is okay. We are just creating a Supabase client, and then we have just called the sign out method. Let's export that function. Let's go to the page and let's import that. Import from utils/actions sign out. And also I need to remove the getSession method. I'm going to use the getUser method. I have an error, image is not defined. Oh, I need to import the image component. I shouldn't have any more errors. Yep. I have another error, invalid source prop. Okay, so the image URL is actually an external URL, so we need to configure that on nextconfig. So inside the nextconfig object, I'm gonna paste another one. So inside the images object, I'm gonna pass a domains array, and these are the domains should be allowed. This one's from Google and this one from GitHub, and our Next.js server should be restarted. Yep. Let's refresh. Okay, so everything is fine. We have the avatar and the user info. Let's click on sign out. And now we are not authenticated. Let's click on sign in. And I am logged in again. So that's it for this video. We have learned how to add Google OAuth in our Next.js project. In the next video, we will learn how to add GitHub OAuth in our Next.js project. So until then, stay safe. Goodbye.